Can I be honest with you for a second? Lately, I have been so freaking frustrated about my chess playing. It's not just the fact that I've been losing games. In fact, often I find losing can be a really great learning experience. But I don't know, I just seem to be making like really dumb mistakes in a bunch of my games, and that's just like super frustrating. However, I think I've found the reason why this is happening. It's interesting, I was actually going through some games and looking at some of these mistakes in order to shoot this video, because I was thinking, I would show some of my blunders and show that, everyone blunders, we're all human, and like give some tips on like how to, be a little more aware and how to stop blundering, basically. But as I was looking through the games, I actually found a pattern, and I'm guessing that this may be a pattern that you've run into as well, maybe without even realizing it. So let's look at a few of these mistakes and see what I'm talking about. So this first one was an online correspondence game, and the opening isn't really that important. I kind of tried to do a Grunfeld thing, and they kind of tried to play a London, and it just kind of went a little bit weird quite quickly. But we have a game on our hands, and this is the point here where I started having some trouble. So the queen came down to b3, and I'm pretty focused on this pawn on b7, which is under attack. And I feel like this attack is pretty important, because if the queen takes this pawn, then my rook is also hanging. And if I try to move my knight over to c6, then the knight is also hanging if the queen is here, right? Of course, knight d7 would have worked. Like if the queen took here, I could have played knight d7, and then everything is actually fine. Except that I'm losing a pawn, and I didn't want to lose that pawn. I figured that I could save it by just simply pushing b6. But this is a blunder, because I completely missed bishop takes f7 with check. And I played this, and then after this move, because of the pin on this pawn, I just resigned at this point, because I figured, this is completely lost at this point. And so before we move on, let's talk about this mistake that I made. The first observation is that this is a case of what I call tunnel vision. And tunnel vision is when you're so fixated on one thing that's going on the chessboard that you kind of just ignore or miss some of the other things that are going on, maybe somewhere else on the board. In this case, I was so fixated on the b pawn that I totally missed that the f pawn was weak. And that leads me to the second observation. The reason that this tunnel vision happened is because there was a problem that I was dealing with. And this is part of the pattern that we're going to see emerging over the course of the next few games. When there's a problem on the board, I can get fixated on that problem. And I bet this is something you've run into as well. And when you get fixated on this one problem that you need to solve that's really important, it can cause this tunnel vision and cause you not to be able to see what's going on somewhere else, which might actually be really important for helping you to solve this problem. And in fact, missing these things can totally lead to other mistakes or blunders that cause even bigger problems for you as the game progresses. So let's have a look at the next one. This was a online chess.com rapid game. And again, the opening isn't too important. We played into the two knights Caro-Kann, which is the same as the third game, interestingly enough. So we traded here. I regrouped on the light squares. As I said, the opening isn't too important. I decided I like when I trade off my light squared bishop, I like to do this fianchetto setup because we just have so many pawns on light squares here. So fianchetto, played some other moves. We're castling on opposite sides, and this H pawn is being pushed. Sorry, the H pawn. The H pawn is being pushed here, and so we continue on. H5 is played, and I castled into it. Maybe not the best move, but not the end of the world either. The H file gets opened up, and then Queen H3. The problem is there's all this pressure on the H pawn, and the queen can come down and take it, and I actually ended up deciding that maybe I don't need to worry about this, right? Because the king actually has this f7 square that it can escape to. So I decided to just let that pawn fall, which isn't ideal, but it is what it is. And I would counterattack over on the king side. And as you can see, that is a blunder. And why is that a blunder? Well, once again, I had a problem that I was fixated on, and I completely missed this other problem. The e6 pawn was also hanging, and I just completely missed it. And now, what happened next? I guess I moved over. Oh yeah, and I got swarmed and checkmated quite quickly here. So that's how the game ended. But once again, back here, there was a problem, and it caused this tunnel vision. I was so focused, like I said, on the H pawn that I missed the E pawn. I just didn't see the attack. I didn't see that it was hanging. And so you're probably starting to see this pattern emerging. And the big one is, when there's a problem, it can cause tunnel vision because I get so fixated on that problem that I just don't seem to see what else is happening on the board. However, I also discovered that this tunnel vision can be caused by something else as well. It's not always when I'm fixated on a problem on the board. And so I want to show you one last game to kind of show you what I mean by this. And this game actually has a very interesting twist at the end, which I think is also very instructional. And then we'll take a quick look at some tips that I've kind of come up with to help myself with this sort of issue, and hopefully it'll help you as well. So this was actually a game from Chess Club with my friend Calvin. And once again, I'm playing black. And once again, we go into a Caro-Kann 2 knights. And I played the bishop out. The opening, again, isn't super important, but I felt pretty good about my position here, actually. So, bringing the queen out, attacking this b-pawn. After knight a4, I can just simply deliver a check, and the knight has to go back. And at this point, I was actually feeling pretty good about my position. I felt like I could develop and give some good pressure, and maybe even win this pawn or this pawn at some point because I have some decent pressure in the middle of the board. So I came up with a bit of a plan here. I decided I could take this pawn, and then whichever way white ends up recapturing, I can bring out my knight to put some pressure on this square. And not only that, but the knight would also put some pressure here. And once the d-pawn is gone, then the e-pawn is only being defended by the knight, which I could trade off with my bishop at any time. So I'm going to be developing my pieces, and I'm going to be kind of doing some of that with tempo and causing some pressure. So I felt like it was a good plan, and I was going to potentially get into a pretty good position out of the opening here. And so I captured with the c-pawn. Calvin recaptured with the queen, and I went ahead with my plan, and I played knight c6. And maybe you have seen the issue here. Yes, this comes with a tempo on the queen, but it also just totally hangs my bishop. Whoops. And so in this case, it's not like the previous ones, right? There wasn't a problem or an issue that was distracting me or that I was getting fixated on and feeling like I had to solve. Instead, I had a plan. I had something that I thought was going to work well and get me into a good position. And that's what I was fixating on. That's what I was focusing so hard on that I completely missed things that were going on elsewhere on the board. And the fact that once the queen recaptures this pawn, then my bishop was going to be hanging. Just totally missed it because I was so focused on, bringing out my knight and having pressure on the queen and attacking that pawn and all of that kind of stuff. So instead of a problem causing tunnel vision, this time it was a plan that caused tunnel vision. Now, interestingly, after this happened, I actually started playing really well in this game. So let's see, brought the knight out, got castled, chased the queen around a little bit, and then I won a pawn. I managed to win this b-pawn. And then a couple moves later, I managed to win another one. And so now I have 2 pawns, even though I, lost a bishop. I guess technically it's 2 pawns for a knight because of how some of the trades went after this. But then a couple moves later, we actually had a series of exchanges here, and I won yet another pawn. So I'm 3 pawns up for the bishop. And technically this is still winning for white, but I feel like I've started to kind of try to turn this game around. Now, there is still a big problem here. The big problem is the dark squares around my king are quite weak because I ended up losing my dark squared bishop through all of that. And so there are potentially some checkmate threats that could start to come in, and I was definitely pretty worried about that. But I also, like I said, I'm up 3 pawns, and 2 of them are passed pawns. And so if I can kind of get those to start rolling down the board or something like this, then I might actually have a chance in this game. But then, after just a few more moves, I missed a skewer. And at this point, I was like, at this point I resigned, actually. I said, oh, well, I've been fighting hard. I feel like I've almost gotten back to equality, and now I'm going to be going down an exchange, and it's lost at this point. Like, there's nothing I can do. But bishop e5, this move by white, was actually a blunder. So pause the video now and see if you can figure out what is the move for black, the only move for black that actually wins the game on the spot. So I'll just give you a minute to figure that out. And once you've taken a bit of time, also leave a comment if you found the move. The winning move is actually queen takes. Queen takes e5. And the reason is white can't recapture. White can't capture the queen because if they do, then if you've ever done like chess.com Puzzle Rush, you'll probably recognize this is a back rank checkmate. And, the queen can block, the rook can block, but there's nothing white can do to stop checkmate from coming at this point. And so queen takes e5 is actually the move. But here, I was again so fixated on the problem. A, the problem of the dark squared weaknesses, and B, the problem of this skewer that I had completely missed, that I didn't take a step back. I didn't even really look to see if there was a solution here. I was just like, oh, game is lost, I resign. Whereas in this case, this is actually winning for black. And so I basically resigned in a winning position. And so I've started calling these issues the two Ps, a problem or a plan. And if you end up getting fixated on either one of these, either a problem on the board or a plan that you have, then you could actually get this tunnel vision and miss other things that are going on. And so I think the solution is to notice and recognize when you're getting fixated on one of these two things, and then take a step back and scan the rest of the board. See if there's anything else that you should notice before coming back to the problem at hand or the plan that you're trying to execute and picking your next move and figuring out how to proceed. Of course, you still need to go back to the problem, right? But it's just a matter of making sure you have the full picture and noticing everything before you deal with that. So I came up with a cute little way to remember this. It's a little rhyme. Problem or plan, do a scan. And that's something that I know it sounds kind of silly, but it's something that I'm going to try to just kind of repeat in my head, especially if I find that I do have a problem or like a strategy or a plan that I'm trying to deal with. Problem or plan, do a scan. And that just simply means, yes, I need to decide how to deal with the problem, or yes, I need to decide how to proceed with the plan, but do a scan first. Take a step back, as I've said. Make sure I don't get that tunnel vision. Problem or plan, do a scan, and then figure out how to proceed. So thank you for watching. I hope you found this interesting or helpful. If so, please like and subscribe, and I will see you on the next video.